Error occurred. Fuck you, StreamYard. There we go. Welcome to the first episode of The Lonely Road. We're here on your journey to heal and become a better human. Many of you may know me from my job or my other podcast, Real Men Talk Shit, or RMTS. This is a very different show. We're going to go into a deep dive of grief and mental health, whether it's stats or stories. We're going to explore it all in depth. After dealing with the trauma I'm currently dealing with, I looked at my girlfriend and I said, I want to find a way to help people and kind of be able to do something that will impact the world and everything else. I've already gotten emails saying, hey, you helped me with this so much. I wanted to kind of leave more of an impact with all of the stuff that I'm currently dealing with. So on top of that, half of the money that this podcast makes ever will be going into charity, whether that's a charity we do, or we sit there and give money to a charity or a family that we know needs help in one of these situations. And as always, this is brought to you by G Fuel. Use code RMTS at checkout for 20% off everything that is on the website. KJ, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and stuff like that?
I am KJ, and I haven't done any podcasts or anything. This is my first, and it's actually very nervous for me. I've just done political stuff on TikTok. I Facebook like the rest of the world does. But for the most part, just the short form TikToks is what I've been. As far as this grief podcast is concerned, this is some pretty heavy stuff, and it hits me to the core. I am someone who feels absolutely everything, and grief.
I think the cool part of it for both of us, honestly, is like if you tell a story or I tell a story, we can essentially verify the things that have happened, almost all of it.
Yeah, for sure.
Because she is my godmother. She's been there for every day that I've been alive since day one, whether we were thousands of miles apart or, not talking at the time. We are more connected than a lot of people would genuinely understand. So I think that adds a hell of a lot of validity to it, is we're actually able to kind of verify what's gone on.
Yeah, that's going to be a good component of it all as well. Since you've been dealing with grief since you were very, very young. Yeah. And I have been dealing with it since I can remember as well. And it just never ever clicked with me. A lot of the things we'll be touching on and talking about. So this is all very new to me, and I will pick up very quickly. But that being said, let's get into it.
Yeah, it's just getting comfortable. And yeah. I think this first topic definitely is kind of near and dear to both of our hearts. And it kind of changed both of us more than I think anybody genuinely would realize, even with us being like the secondary people that are affected in that situation. Mm-hmm. It caused my suicidal ideation for 26 years. I was just talking about this on my show, Real Men Talk Shit, and I was like, it's really hard to kind of just grasp and look at suicidal ideation as something that's not just the big boogeyman that you put suicide in any conversation. It's scary. Yeah. Okay, well, yeah, it's scary. But I handled this section of my life and the stories that have come from it. I got offered a TED Talk because of this stuff. I got offered to be able to do a lot of very interesting things and kind of share my story. And I didn't end up doing them, but it's scary. It diagnosed me with suicidal ideation at 27, and it started at the age of 4. And that is the story of my brother's passing when I was a child and kind of everything that kind of surrounds that. I have a whole bunch of stats and everything else. And it's kind of interesting, but it's sad and depressing because, even as a kid in that situation, it's hard to grasp. But the interesting part to me, so I looked up these as I dropped whatever I was fidgeting with. I looked up some stats, and obviously I just recently dealt with the passing of a pregnancy as well after 20 weeks. And as of 2021, the statistics of an occurrence of a death within pregnancy after 20 weeks is 1 in 100. And that kind of blew my mind. Even at 2021, we're still losing 1 out of every 100 pregnancies after 20 weeks. So that's crazy.
Yeah.
My mom's pregnancy ended at 26 weeks, so this is even more solidified than that. And it was a pregnancy with twins, my sister, who's still here. Um, so positive there, but as a whole, sucks.
Yeah.
And the other crazy stats that I saw is 6.4% of children 9 to 10 deal with suicidal ideation or suicidal thoughts. And in children with ADHD and oppositional defiance disorder, which is a major part of ADHD kids, that number triples to almost 20% of kids dealing with suicidal ideation. So after looking at that, I don't think that this was as crazy or as impactful as it seems like it would have been. Because I think anybody in this situation with two drastic people, my brother being, this light almost towards our family, being something new is going to happen, passing away. And then my grandma, who was essentially my mom for the first 3 years of my life, passing as well. 20%, that's a 1 in 5 likelihood to be suicidal at that point. And, I wrote it as the title of my TED talk when I was writing the paperwork was, life rolls on with or without you. My check is rolling out the window. And KJ, as you know, I wanted to roll out of the window of a 4-story building. And I don't think that would have been a very positive outlook. So when you look at this situation, obviously you were my mom's best friend at the time and you were really, really close. How did this all look from the other side of it? Because I can only, like, my 4-year-old mind can only grasp so much at that time.
Yeah.
But I know where my resentment lies and where I struggle to see things, but where did you see problems in this?
I mean, I was very young. And it was not my first dealing with death, but it was a very, very close dealing. Your mother and I have been very close for a long time. And there's more than her being my best friend to this day. That's the component of that. She was my first girlfriend. And that puts a completely another layer onto it for me.
But makes everything kind of shaded and uncomfortable, I'm sure.
It wasn't really as uncomfortable. I mean, I had gotten over the uncomfort factor much earlier, and we had chosen to move on as friends. And we both made that conscious decision to do so. So it was not as much of a uncomfortable factor, but it was definitely at a time where I still had feelings for a person who was going through things that I wanted to go through with someone else. So there was a component of that, but a very small component of that, but another layer nonetheless. But I just remember my memories are very sporadic when I deal with anything in life, really. I don't have a vivid memory. I remember how things made me feel, how people make me feel. Other than that, I have very scattered memories. A lot of people have these picturesque memories. I don't have that. But what I do remember...
my memory with that is insane, and nobody else has it because I have something called an eidetic memory, where it's, the autism brain. I know everything that happened. I can explain this entire situation. That's why I figured it was easier to start off with you, of trying to feel out what the hell actually happened and what was going on, because I could tell so much.
Yeah. No, I mean, I was your stepdad. We'll call. He was in there, and then he got told to leave, and he just came out and got me, and we both went into the hallway, right basically on the other side of the door of the operating room. And all I can remember is just sitting there and him pacing back and forth and back and forth. Mm-hmm. And then that was for a while. And then I just remember being in a room with your mom, Fa, the baby, and a nurse. And they were passing the baby around to be held. And I'm I had a lot of feelings about that portion of it. I was asked to take pictures. That was very hard for me.
Yeah.
But it was the least I could do for my best friend who's laying there and having this have happened to her. And she asked me to cut a lock of his hair. And to this day, I still shake when I talk about it. I did. And I felt like I got too close to his scalp with the scissors because his hair was, I mean, there's not a lot
Yeah,
there.
there's not very much.
And to this day, that I still get that feeling.
Yeah, it's hard to grasp.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want to fully go into the story, but I had to deal with something very similar literally a month ago now. And those pictures traumatized the fuck out of me. Us losing that pregnancy and us trying to deal with all that. And they're like, can you take pictures to make sure she's okay? And I'm like, yes, I will. But like, ow, like hurts. Like I didn't even, let me say this. I didn't even know that any of that you just said happened. That's never been told to me ever. So like, it's hard. It's really hard because you're grasping at something that just was there and you are so close to it being in your hands that it's kind of taken from you.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. And it was very, very surreal. Yeah. At the time it was very surreal. Now it's very surreal.
Yeah.
But it was, as far as the act or the day was concerned, it was horrible, and there'll be a cloud over it, over that particular day. Now, as far as the day moving forward, I have been able to make a clean break, if you will, from that day continuing on every year. That's not something that a lot of people have or can do, but I chose to do that because of your sister. I didn't want that to be a cloud over your sister.
I think that cloud that a lot of people will hold on to and like make it a big deal, make it something that's like tangible almost. I think that's part of what caused my suicidal ideation, like as it moved forward and stuff like that. Like when I look at this situation and everything else, and I really kind of don't want to go out of order, but it's going to be Jagged Boys. I'm sorry. I really am, but it's my mind's all over the place. Like it's hard. It's hard to hear. Well, I wonder what they would do when you're the kid that's unequal to the kid that passed. It's hard to wonder where those kind of feelings and emotions are. Like they don't say those same things about you because you're there. So then you feel disconnected because they're trying to feel about something else that's not there. And it's really kind of hard to grasp.
Yeah.
So after my grandma died, my mom spiraled drastically and it caused a massive depression and we ended up losing everything. We lost the apartment we were in. We ended up having to move and everything else. We were dealing with Katie's cerebral palsy and everything else. And I remember learning that, some people are just different, Zach. Some kids are just different and having to learn sign language and having to know all of this stuff. And it's weird because grandma's passing at that age affected me more at that point in time, probably because I was so close to her.
You were very close.
And it was hard to grasp, really hard to grasp. I remember starting to have night terrors and feeling like I was going to lose everything. And it's crazy to look back on because those nightmares, I still can tell you the same exact thing that happened. I can still tell you all of it. It's weird. It's weird the things that stick out, and it's weird the things that affect you later on that didn't affect you when they happened.
That's true. It's very, very true. This subject.
Go ahead. I
It's
didn't.
particularly hard to talk about grief, and I think that that's a lot of the reason why there's not grief podcasts. There's not a lot on the internet about grief. There's not a lot of people talking about it because it's so taboo. But I think it's really important. I think it's important to have the conversations and to have
I
the
think
experiences that we can share
I
because
think the
people.
hard part is people actually feeling like whatever they're feeling is okay. Like you could be angry it happened. You could
It's
be sad
important.
it happened. You could be depressed. You could be happy in some circumstances. And it all of those different circumstances can make you look absolutely fucking insane.
Yeah.
All of them.
Yeah. And then there's the guilt that comes with it.
Yeah.
Whether it's survivor's guilt or whether it's a different kind of guilt of the way that you had a relationship with that person or didn't have a relationship with that person or, whatever definitely comes with the territory in a lot of ways.
Well, that survivor's guilt is something that I've always dealt with, and I think that that's what it developed into for me. I don't remember when it started. I think it was when we moved into the apartment after that house, the one on you know what road I'm talking about,
Uh-huh.
the apartment complex, where there was always a shelf in the living room with all of his things on it, and my mom always kind of like applauded it like it was this big thing that had to be there. Nobody could touch it. Nobody could question anything about it. It just had to be. To me, that grief, that holding on to that thing and creating it to be such a unquestionable thing caused a lot of those feelings of not being able to move past because it's always right there in your face.
Did you ever inquire about it?
I have since, like now that I'm an adult and like everything that we just dealt with and stuff like that, I made the same choice. I have stuff for my son in my office. My girlfriend has a necklace on with his ashes in it. We've made it to a point where it is important, but at the same time, if you have a question, ask. Like
Right.
I've seen the negative things of like, okay, if you make it so way, there's no questions. If you make it so way, everything's unavailable to be talked about. It's impossible not to cause pain, regardless of if that's a little baby or a 10-year-old or a 13-year-old. All of them are going to kind of deal with it differently and feel it differently, and it's rough.
Sure. It's interesting that you felt like you couldn't talk about it or couldn't ask about it at that time. If you were inquisitive about it and you wanted to know, you were a quiet guy after that. You weren't but I'm curious. I'm curious as to why you didn't or why you thought that you couldn't.
I remember then, and then I was kind of, I think because of grandma and grandpa going to church and everything else, and I remember wondering if God was punishing me or like there was something I did wrong because I lost so much of my family within seconds. Within seconds of my life, I lost so much. My mom lost so much. We lost so much. There was so much pain. What did I do wrong? And I think that it just compounded over and over and over again. And I remember my mom finally coming forward about that book that she found in the trunk of her car. And I don't know if you remember what I'm talking about. She found was like an illustrated book of angels and stuff like that. And there was a handwritten note on the front page from my grandma. And it was never given to us, I guess, until after she passed. Nobody ever came to claim it. Nobody ever said, oh, well, I did that. Nothing ever happened about it. And it just was like, don't worry about Brett. I've got him. I'm here. I'm taking care of him. You never have to worry about him again. Or something similar to that. I'm paraphrasing. I haven't read it in like 15 years. But it's weird. It's weird looking back at that entire situation and looking at everything that I did, everything that I felt, and even like the recent stuff that I've dealt with and kind of looked back at all of this stuff and tried to grasp it.
Yeah, just kind of a kind of a full circle moment for you, bud.
Yeah. And it's hard. It's really hard not to see it as a mirror. It's really hard not to see, well, she struggled so hard because she didn't have anybody around her to help.
Yeah.
And it's weird because she asked me that the other day. She's like, do you blame me for your suicidal ideation? Do you blame me for everything that happened with Brett? And I'm like, no, I don't. For the first 5 years of that problem, I don't blame you in the slightest. After I was 12, 13 years old and still feeling those feelings, yeah, I needed help and nobody was there to help. I couldn't get the words out.
Right.
And it's scary. It's scary because I'm so scared of my kids kind of struggling in the same exact way.
Yeah, you can take your feelings and experiences and that use that as a map, good or bad, to guide you
Yeah.
in either direction, with your kids specifically, because of how you felt. You and her both need time to digest and grieve. But at the same time, keeping in mind that there's 3 others also grieving.
Yeah.
And
it's weird to kind of figure out that line. Do you treat them as equals to you? Because I think that's honestly the answer.
well, at what level though? Because they only have a certain amount of understanding.
Yeah.
You have to let them know the realities of it, but you also have to make sure that they know that none of this is their fault or anything that they've done. You know what I mean? Like, if that's something that you remember specifically as being a pinpoint, that's definitely something that you want to make sure that you pass on or move forward with, knowing that you're addressing in each one of your children.
Yeah. And that grief, that depression that hit all of us so hard and heavily. It was weird, the fact that it affected Bella, my youngest sister, so deeply and heavily after about 5, 6 years after she was born. It's almost like she got survivor's guilt after.
She does. She deals with death very, very deeply.
And very
deep
oddly,
level.
and I'm not saying that in a negative light. It's just, I've never seen somebody who was born after somebody and's like, I mourn their death like it happened yesterday and I was there. Like, how can you never meet somebody but yet mourn somebody so heavily?
Well, there were also patterns.
Gary,
there were patterns in her life, from the beginning of her life. There were patterns, things that your mother did every year for her own process that she needed to go through. And Bella witnessed those things, and she felt and saw how deeply your mother was grieving, And so those patterns, they make habits, and I think that she's learned. And I also think, she's your sister Bella is she's very unique, and she's got a very special spirit. And I believe that it runs deep specifically in this area for her.
Yeah. And I think that kind of goes to the point where I'm 14 at this time. And you finally come home. And this was like the first time that you were home in a good while. I think you were even talking about moving home at this point, or might have already started moving home at this point. And my attempt happens. And I looked at Katie on her birthday and I said, I'm sorry, I love you. And I walked away. And I attempted suicide. And it's weird. It's weird finally looking at all of this and being so genuinely honest with myself that it's still hard to look at. I made a podcast on that same exact day 4 years ago. And I wanted to be able to work past all of this. I wanted to be able to let all of it go because I didn't want to sit here behind a tattoo that I ended up getting with you, or all of these feelings of like not being enough for anybody. It's so hard. That survivor's guilt, like looking back at it as an adult and being like, I understand what the fuck I was feeling and why I was feeling it, but I needed not to feel it.
Yeah. Yeah. From my point of view, I rejected feeling it, and I ran away. I went to Utah.
Yeah.
I left, and I left your mom alone to deal with it. It's a lot of guilt. That's the guilt that I hold.
Yeah.
But it yeah.
It's hard. It's hard. Like, I remember every single section of that day, every single part. And it's so hard not to just rotate over it with all of the shit that's gone on. It's like, my mom told me recently, she's like, Grandma and Grandpa told me that you were going to be resilient, that you were going to be okay. Don't make the same mistake I did and just let them squander. Don't let them struggle with this silently. I let you struggle with it silently, and I never knew that anything was wrong. So even if this is the only thing that anybody grasps from this episode, is even if you're as close as me and my mom were, and me and my mom were very, very, very fucking close at that point. Me and KJ were very fucking close at that point. Nobody knew I attempted. Not a single person did for 3 years. Not a single person.
We knew you were quiet. We knew you were withdrawn. We knew that you were dealing with something. I knew that you were dealing with something. But I don't think that she had any wherewithal at that point to even
I don't
think
think
beyond
anybody
her
did.
own grief.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
Even at that point, and that's, 10 years later, 12 years later.
Yeah.
And it's hard. And that part is I think the bigger thing that I think both of us want for everybody is holding on to a grief, holding on to such an impactful day in your life that's negative. Unless you turn that positive, unless you try and make something out of it to be okay, that gloom will be over you and it will destroy everything that you're trying to change.
It can definitely take you down. And when they were talking about quicksand when I was a kid, that was the big thing that we needed to be aware of was quicksand. It was going to worry us later in life. Well, the quicksand in my life has been grief. And it will take you down. It will take you down.
Yeah.
I spent years barely trying to keep myself above that quicksand.
So my mom gave me some of the biggest credit the other day. And we've gone through hell in the past, 10 years.
Yeah.
My mom looked at me and said, I know that even in all of this hell, you will make sure your girlfriend is okay. You will make sure your family's okay. And you will lead all of us out of this. Because I couldn't last time. And honestly, regardless of everything that's gone on, those words mean so much.
Good.
They are so fucking impactful. Because it's like she actually realizes the things that caused that pain, I guess. She realizes that I could see what happened and how to change it.
Yep. Yeah. That's something that you definitely have done, I believe, is seen a lot of the things that have gone right in your life, and you've chosen to follow those paths, but you've also seen a lot of the things that have gone wrong, and you've chosen to correct for your own family. And that just needs to move forward with this and the grief, that they may or may not be feeling. Most likely they are, whether they know it or not.
So the big part of this ends up in both of us getting a tattoo. And I came to you with this tattoo idea. I was like, I want Tommy Pickles wearing a Yankees hat and, just something that symbolizes him and kind of lighthearted. And our upstairs neighbor was like, hey, I do tattoos. What's your idea? This dude couldn't draw for shit. And the fact that none of us, and all of us are artists in our own different way, whether it's me with words and visual art or photography or whatever. None of us went over this with a fine-tooth comb and was like, this is wrong. Blows my mind.
I got it because that's what you wanted.
Yeah.
It was what you wanted, so that's what we got.
And I thought it would heal. I thought it would heal me. And now that's why I did it. Was like I want something to just get the feelings out and feel them, but I also want to be able to let it go.
That's the part that the tattoo is not going to do for you. You can now tattoos are therapeutic in a lot of ways. I have my share of them as well. But
half sleeves on both arms now.
The tattoos can't do the rest of the work for you, and that's the letting go part. That's my problem.
And I think both of us dealt with the same exact problem in that. Is it wasn't the fact that we knew how to let go and we just couldn't. It was the fact that neither one of us were shown. Neither one of us knew.
No, because I don't. Well, I mean, I never. I mean, I watched my mom lose her dad. At that point, I had watched that, but it was also something that I had compartmentalized and dealt with in the way of doing something else over here to keep my mind off it. So I think that my mom, particularly my mom, we didn't talk about it a lot, mostly because I didn't want to talk about it. I wish I had talked about it more with her. But no, I don't. You, me, your mother, we didn't get those lessons from our parents. You got it by watching. That was your game.
That's the only way that I was able to learn those things was there. And this is where it gets hard, and it's hard not to critique and look at the things without my bias. And it's hard to look at these things and not be like, well, I needed help. After one of those things, you would need help, let alone both. And not being able to grasp those things, not being able to understand that, somebody's gone. Two people are gone. There's a huge impact on life here. What exactly that means. And why doesn't it affect me long term? And why can it be okay? I wasn't shown how to be okay. I learned how to be okay at 27 years old. The fact that but 13 years after something, that's crazy. It's crazy.
Yeah. No, that's what happens. That's the cycle of people. People, especially with grief, that's one thing that people don't take classes on. I took, when I was in college, I did take a death, dying, and bereavement class. And it was very, very, very interesting. But that's, in general, one thing that people don't talk about. So that's what I'm talking about is the taboo. The taboo, taking away the taboo will help these conversations to happen. But death has been very, very taboo for a very long time, so nobody talked about it.
Well, even psychology behind it, and everybody will be like, "Herder, you're not a doctor. Don't speak like one." No, I helped my mom with every single one of her psychology courses. I was there through all of them, and I've dealt with a lot of mental illness my entire life. So if somebody's going to tell you mental illness without a doctorate, I'm a pretty okay place to listen. It's hard to grasp all of this without looking at the mental illness that not only did it cause, but it was caused by. And that's the hard part, is like the physical disease my grandma dealt with, the physical disease Brett dealt with, caused my mom's manic depressive to come out. That manic depressive sent her on a spiral to numerous different places that I'm sure neither one of us will ever understand. And it caused me to become suicidal and have suicidal ideation, and caused me to be so fucking depressive for so many years. What would you, in that time, what would you need to hear to handle it better? Looking back at it now.
I I can't even think about a one thing that I would need to hear to have handled that situation better. I think that people opening up and talking about a situation helps communication to flow so people can get through things better. And if you don't talk about something, it's not going to happen. I could have, for myself, just been more solid. If I could have been more solid for myself and not been searching, then I could have been solid for other people that I loved, including you and your mother. But I was all around and up in the air in my own self. So there was no solidifying anything to be solid for anybody at that point in my life.
And I think that that's my point, is like, I may have been 4 at the time, but like the shit that you put out into the world, which is why I think everything's kind of okay now. The shit that you put out into the world, even in the darkest days, you're still trying to bring light. That's your job. It's not just destroy everything because I'm in a shitty mood today. It's not destroy everything or tear everything down because I'm depressed. It's not throw everything away because, you know what, I can't do this. You got to have some level of accountability to not only the people around you, but yourself. You got to have a day worth living.
Yeah.
So even if you cannot make sure that you are okay today, if there's people around you or something that can help you feel okay, whether that's bettering your house, bettering your life, bettering somebody around you, which is why I think this is my choice to kind of heal.
Yeah.
My girlfriend's first words this week was, "When are you recording so that way I know that you're taken care of?" She just wanted to make sure that I had time to record and stream and do everything that I need to do to feel okay. Because she knows that if I'm okay, everybody else in this house will get a fucking light. Every single person in this house will make sure that they are okay. And
Good. I'm glad that she knows that about you. And I'm glad that you're like that.
And I think all of us saw that on Friday. I think every single one of us saw that on Friday. My little baby Ava, I love that girl to fucking death.
She's great.
Is one of the brightest and lightest people I've ever seen in my life. Her first thought was not, "Oh, we're all going to be sad." It was, everybody's going to laugh at me because I'm a smartass, and I'm going to laugh around and joke around with everybody in this room, regardless of whose attention.
Bella was just like that too.
She's so amazing and just tries to bring everybody up.
Yeah.
But I hope for everybody, regardless of if you believe in what I'm saying or not, be the light, whether it's for yourself, your family, your significant other, your kids. Because the only person that can pull you out of a depression or grief or being able to be okay is you.
Yeah. And we intend to help lay out some tools in order to do that, because that's a big statement to say without having tools to go along with it.
And it's very easy to be able to grasp onto that and be like, that's impossible.
Right.
I don't have somebody who's my floor.
It's huge. Yeah.
If you don't have somebody who's your floor and will help you even in the hardest days, then you don't have the right people around you. And that is one of the hardest things I ever had to grasp. If everybody leaves you when you can't hold yourself up, but they're there when you can, nobody's there. Not a single person is.
That's what boils down to is, you have your family, but at the end of the day, it's you. And you have to be able to stand on your own too in order to make anything okay around you.
It's what boils down to the exact answer of that is the lonely road. The lonely road is being able to be the calm in the storm when every single day isn't fucking okay. Even when there's chaos and everything else, and you're predicting every single fucking thing that's about to happen in front of you. You know everything that's about to happen. And you fight through it. It's knowing that even if there's one street light on in the road, you know you're going to fucking light it. And whoever needs to follow you is going to come behind you. And at some point, you won't be alone. Because now, every single one of you are not alone. Regardless of if this helps one or helps hundreds of thousands, I don't care. I'd rather cut myself and make myself bleed so that way every single person is okay than every single one of you bleed because I didn't.
I'd like to take all the pain that I've experienced and how I've dug myself out of those holes to even help one person. That'll make it worth it for me.
So guys, I don't know what days these are going up, or if KJ had any more stories and notes that she wanted to touch on. But I hope that it helps. I hope getting it out there helps KJ, helps me, helps any of you knowing that this shit's hard. There is no guidebook. But we're going to show you how to light the fucking telephone pole, and we're going to keep going. We'll see you next time.